Have you ever wondered why the most powerful prophets of our time are giving completely opposite messages about the same man? While Kim Clement declared Donald Trump would be God's chosen vessel for transformation, Jonathan Cahn warns he represents judgment and tribulation. What if I told you that both prophecies are absolutely correct, and that the hidden truth behind this apparent contradiction reveals something profound about the nature of prophecy itself that most spiritual seekers never discover? Most people in the prophetic community are trapped in linear thinking, believing they must choose sides in this divine debate. But you're different. You sense there's something deeper here, and you're absolutely right. What they're missing is the profound esoteric principle that ancient Hebrew prophets understood perfectly, but which has been systematically removed from modern prophetic teaching. Today, you're about to discover the secret knowledge that reconciles these seemingly opposing visions and reveals why Trump's role transcends simple categories of blessing or judgment. Throughout history, the greatest prophetic mysteries have always contained what ancient mystics call the dual nature revelation, a principle that most spiritual seekers never learn because it requires accessing hidden layers of prophetic interpretation that were deliberately obscured. The ancient Hebrew prophets knew this secret. The early Christian mystics understood it completely. Even the Sufi masters wrote extensively about this concept. Yet somehow, this profound wisdom has been systematically removed from mainstream prophetic teaching during what historians call the Great Prophetic Suppression. To grasp this hidden truth, think of prophecy like light itself. Remember how quantum physics revealed that light behaves as both wave and particle simultaneously. When Kim Clement spoke of a chosen vessel, he wasn't just talking about political leadership. He was accessing a deeper prophetic frequency that operates beyond conventional timelines. This is the same mystical principle that allowed Daniel to see multiple kingdoms rising simultaneously in his visions, not sequentially, as most biblical scholars incorrectly teach. The real secret lies in understanding what the ancient masters called prophetic paradox resolution, a technique that reveals how apparent contradictions in divine revelation actually point to a higher truth. When Clement declared Trump would bring forth God's purposes and Cahn proclaimed he would usher in judgment, they were both accessing different dimensional aspects of the same prophetic reality. Think about this for a moment. In quantum physics, we've discovered that light behaves as both a wave and a particle simultaneously, depending on how we observe it. The same principle applies to prophetic revelation. Trump represents both the vessel of blessing and the catalyst of judgment, existing in what mystics call divine duality, a state that transcends human either-or thinking. Most people can't grasp this concept because they're operating from a three-dimensional prophetic framework, while true seers access what ancient texts call the prophetic veil, a realm where past, present, and future converge to reveal the complete picture. This is why Clement could see the positive transformation, while Cahn perceives the necessary judgment period. Both are viewing the same divine chess move from different prophetic dimensions. Here's where this gets fascinating, and I want you to really absorb this because it changes everything about prophetic interpretation. What I'm about to reveal will show you that this isn't the first time in history we've witnessed this prophetic paradox. Picture this. When the ancient prophets spoke of the coming Messiah, some declared he would be a conquering king, while others proclaimed he would suffer and die. Early religious scholars were completely baffled by these contradictions. They spent centuries debating which prophecies were true, until they realized both prophecies were fulfilled in the same person, just at different phases of his divine assignment. Now here's where this gets really extraordinary. The Trump prophecies contain the same multidimensional structure, but there's a third layer that neither Clement nor Cahn fully revealed in their public messages. This hidden dimension explains not just what Trump's role is, but why the prophetic community needed to receive these seemingly contradictory visions at this precise moment in human history. You see, the ancient prophetic masters understood that major divine interventions always follow what they called the three-phase revelation pattern. Imagine a divine chess game being played across dimensions. Each move appears contradictory until you see the complete strategy. Phase 1 presents the blessing aspect. Phase 2 reveals the judgment component, and Phase 3 unveils the transformative synthesis that emerges when both forces converge. We've seen Phases 1 and 2 through Clement and Khan's visions, but the third phase remains hidden in what esoteric traditions call the sealed prophetic chamber. Most prophetic teachers today are completely unaware of this three-phase system because this knowledge was deliberately obscured during what historians call the Great Prophetic Suppression of the medieval period. The institutional church recognized that this deeper prophetic wisdom gave individuals too much direct access to divine revelation. So they systematically removed these teachings from mainstream spiritual education. But here's what's extraordinary. Fragments of this ancient knowledge survived like hidden treasures scattered across cultures. The Kabbalists preserved it in their concept of the threefold divine emanation. The Christian mystics hid it within their writings about the threefold path. Even certain Islamic scholars maintained these teachings in their descriptions of prophetic consciousness levels. It's as if the divine truth was too powerful to be completely erased, so it went underground, waiting for the right moment to resurface. But here's what will absolutely astound you about the Trump prophecies, and why this moment is so significant. Never before have we witnessed such a clear demonstration of the three-phase prophetic pattern playing out in real time through different seers. This isn't coincidence. It's what the ancient masters would recognize as a prophetic convergence event, signaling that humanity is approaching a major evolutionary threshold. The blessing prophecies through Clement activated the first phase, establishing the divine choice and protection over Trump's mission. The warning prophecies through Khan initiated the second phase, preparing people for the necessary purification and judgment period that always accompanies major spiritual transformations. But the third phase, the synthesis revelation, holds the key to understanding how these seemingly opposite forces will merge to produce an outcome that transcends both blessing and judgment. Now stay with me here because this next part is crucial. You might be wondering how you can access this hidden third dimension of prophetic understanding for yourself. The ancient masters developed specific techniques for penetrating what they called the prophetic veil. Think of it like learning to see with spiritual X-ray vision. These techniques allow ordinary seekers to perceive the deeper patterns behind surface-level religious confusion. These methods have been closely guarded for centuries, passed down only through initiate lineages and mystical schools. But here's something the ancient prophetic masters discovered that changes everything about how we interpret divine revelation in our current time. Picture prophecy as a mirror. It doesn't just show external events, it reflects internal transformations. They learned that major prophetic convergences like the Trump phenomenon aren't just about the individual mentioned in the visions. They're actually coded messages about the spiritual awakening process happening within the people receiving these prophecies. The real question isn't whether Trump is a chosen vessel or a judgment catalyst. The hidden truth is that the prophetic confusion surrounding his role is designed to activate something within those who are ready to transcend conventional religious thinking. When you can hold both Clement's and Khan's visions simultaneously without needing to choose sides, you've accessed what mystics call prophetic consciousness, a state of awareness that allows you to perceive divine patterns beyond ordinary human comprehension. This is why the ancient seers always spoke in paradoxes and apparent contradictions. They weren't trying to confuse people. They were providing coded instructions for accessing higher levels of prophetic perception. The Trump prophecies follow this exact pattern, serving as what esoteric traditions call consciousness catalysts for those ready to evolve beyond linear prophetic interpretation. But there's something even deeper the prophets aren't telling you about this prophetic paradox. Something that reveals not just the truth about Trump's role, but the hidden meaning behind why you're drawn to understanding these mysteries in the first place. The real secret isn't in choosing between these prophecies. It's in discovering what they reveal about your own spiritual awakening process and your role in the greater divine plan that's unfolding right now. The ancient masters knew that when seekers become obsessed with decoding external prophetic events, they're actually being called to decode something much more profound within themselves. The Trump prophecies are like a mirror, reflecting back the very transformation that's meant to happen in your own consciousness. And that's where the third interpretation comes in, the one that changes everything about how you see not just these prophecies, but your entire purpose in this cosmic moment we're living through. Now, the third interpretation I mentioned reveals why both prophecies are absolutely true, but they exist in different dimensions of spiritual reality. You see, when we approach biblical prophecy through the lens of mystical awakening, we discover that contradictions in the physical realm often point to deeper spiritual truths that transcend linear time. Think about this for a moment. What if the very confusion surrounding these prophecies isn't a sign of their failure, but actually a divine mechanism designed to separate those who seek surface-level understanding from those ready to receive deeper spiritual truth? The ancient masters knew this principle well. They encoded multiple layers of meaning into their teachings, knowing that only those with awakened spiritual discernment would perceive the hidden patterns. Here's what most people miss completely. The Third Temple prophecy and the Temple Mount crisis aren't just about physical buildings or political tensions. They represent the eternal battle between lower consciousness and higher spiritual awakening. When you understand this mystical framework, you realize that both sides of the prophetic debate are actually describing the same spiritual process from different dimensional perspectives. Let me share something that will completely shift your understanding, and I want you to visualize this as I describe it. The temple itself is a metaphor for your consciousness. Picture a magnificent structure with three distinct levels. The outer court represents your everyday awareness, the place where most people live their entire lives, focused on bills, schedules, and surface-level concerns. The inner court symbolizes the awakened mind that has learned to perceive beyond the veil of physical reality, like stepping into a room where you can suddenly see spiritual dimensions. And the Holy of Holies? That's the state of pure prophetic consciousness where time becomes fluid and future events can be perceived with crystal clarity. The ultimate spiritual sanctuary within your own being. Now here's where this gets really profound. The reason prophecy seems contradictory is because prophetic consciousness operates outside linear time. When a true prophet receives a vision, they're seeing the spiritual essence of events, not necessarily their exact physical manifestation. This is why Daniel's timelines can seem to point to multiple periods, and why Ezekiel's temple descriptions contain measurements that don't match any physical structure ever built. Now, what I'm about to reveal next will fundamentally shift everything you thought you knew about prophecy, and this is where your personal transformation begins. You can develop this same prophetic discernment. Think of yourself as a radio that's been tuned to static, but you're about to discover the clear station frequency. The chaos and confusion in today's prophetic interpretations isn't happening by accident. It's creating the perfect conditions for spiritual seekers to transcend ordinary understanding and access higher levels of consciousness. Remember when I said there's a deeper spiritual truth that resolves all prophetic conflicts? Here it is, and this revelation will completely transform how you see everything. The third temple has already been built, not in Jerusalem, but in the consciousness of every person who awakens to their true spiritual nature. Imagine this. Every time you have a moment of spiritual insight, you're adding another stone to this invisible temple. The prophecies aren't describing future buildings or political events. They're describing the stages of consciousness evolution that humanity is experiencing right now. This is why you feel drawn to understand these mysteries. Your soul recognizes that you're living through the fulfillment of ancient prophecies, not as external events, but as internal transformations. The Temple Mount tensions, the prophetic disagreements, the confusion about timelines, all of this is the outer manifestation of humanity's spiritual awakening process. When you grasp this truth, you understand why traditional biblical scholars miss the mark completely. Picture them as archaeologists digging for treasure in the wrong location. They're looking for external fulfillment of internal realities. They're seeking physical temples when the prophecies describe consciousness temples. They're waiting for future events that are actually present spiritual processes happening right now, in this very moment, as you listen to these words. But here's what makes your situation unique. You're not just observing this prophetic fulfillment, you're participating in it. Every time you question surface-level interpretations and seek deeper meaning, you're building the spiritual temple within your own consciousness. You're becoming the living fulfillment of the prophecies that have puzzled humanity for centuries. Remember how we began this journey exploring the mystery of conflicting Trump prophecies? You now understand that both Kim Clement and Jonathan Cahn were absolutely correct. They were simply accessing different dimensions of the same prophetic reality. This isn't contradiction. It's the divine duality that ancient seers mastered. Now that you understand the deeper mechanics of prophetic paradox, I want to share the most powerful technique for developing this same multidimensional prophetic discernment. And I want you to pay close attention, because this is the key that transforms you from confused observer to active participant in prophetic consciousness. This method comes from the mystical traditions that understood the true nature of prophecy long before modern interpretational debates began. It's called the Three Levels Practice, and it will transform how you perceive not just biblical prophecy, but all spiritual truth. Think of it as your personal decoder ring for divine mysteries. The first level is the literal reading, what most people stop at. This is where you see prophecy as prediction of external events. The second level is the symbolic interpretation, where you recognize that prophetic language often uses earthly imagery to describe spiritual realities. But the third level, this is where true prophetic consciousness emerges. At this level, you perceive prophecy as living spiritual energy that's constantly manifesting through human consciousness evolution. Here's how to practice this, and I encourage you to try this with the very next prophetic passage you encounter. Take any prophetic passage that confuses you. First, read it literally and notice what questions arise. This is like looking at the surface of a deep lake. Then read it symbolically and ask what spiritual truths the imagery might represent. Now you're beginning to see beneath the surface. Finally, read it mystically and feel into what consciousness shift the prophecy might be describing. This is where you dive to the very depths where the real treasures are hidden. This three-level approach will open prophetic understanding that goes far beyond academic study. The reason this works so powerfully is because it aligns your consciousness with the same multidimensional awareness that the original prophets possessed. It's like tuning into the exact frequency that Daniel, Ezekiel, and the other great seers accessed. You stop being a confused observer of ancient predictions and become an active participant in the consciousness evolution that prophecy actually describes. This is exactly what you came here to discover, how apparent contradictions in prophecy actually reveal deeper spiritual truths when viewed through awakened consciousness. You're no longer trapped in linear thinking about divine revelation. This is why the current prophetic confusion serves a divine purpose, and this might surprise you. It's forcing spiritual seekers to move beyond dependency on external authorities and develop their own direct connection to prophetic consciousness. The temple controversies, the timeline debates, the interpretational conflicts, all of this is creating the perfect storm for spiritual awakening. It's like the universe is deliberately shaking up old patterns to force breakthrough moments. When you develop this level of prophetic discernment, you realize something extraordinary, something that will liberate you from endless waiting and wondering. You don't need to wait for external events to validate your spiritual understanding. You don't need scholars to agree on interpretations. You don't need physical temples to be built. You become the living temple, the fulfilled prophecy, the answered question. This is the hidden truth I promise to reveal, the secret that reconciles all prophetic contradictions. It's not about choosing sides between seers. It's about awakening to the prophetic consciousness that transcends all debate. You've discovered that you've been carrying this treasure of understanding within you all along. And here's the most beautiful part. This is where everything comes together in perfect harmony. As your prophetic consciousness awakens, you begin to see the divine pattern operating through all the apparent chaos. Like suddenly recognizing a masterpiece painting where you once saw only random brush strokes. The conflicts aren't obstacles to truth. They're precisely designed catalysts for consciousness evolution. The confusion isn't evidence of prophetic failure. It's proof that humanity is ready for the next level of spiritual understanding. What you've experienced today is more than just understanding contradictory prophecies. You've awakened to your role in the cosmic unfolding that ancient seers could only glimpse. The confusion that once troubled you about conflicting visions has transformed into clarity about your own prophetic potential. You now possess the key to prophetic discernment that transcends all debates, resolves all contradictions, and opens the gateway to authentic spiritual understanding. The third temple isn't coming. It's here, in the awakened consciousness that you're developing right now as these truths resonate within you. Every time you apply the 3 levels practice, you're not just interpreting prophecy, you're participating in its fulfillment. Every moment you choose to see beyond surface contradictions, you're building the living temple of consciousness that prophecy has always been describing. This is your invitation to step beyond the limitation of traditional interpretation and into the realm of direct prophetic knowing. If this understanding stirs something deep within you, if you recognize yourself as someone ready to transcend conventional religious thinking, then you're already walking the path that ancient mystics spent lifetimes seeking. Your journey into prophetic consciousness isn't beginning, it's awakening. You are here by divine design, at precisely the right moment in human history, ready to receive what the ancients could only dream of accessing.